Jason and Ben started their careers on the exact same day, at the exact same company, making the exact same salary. Same desk setup. Same $52,000 salary. Same first paycheck, deposited on the same Friday morning. On paper, their financial futures looked identical. But that first Friday, they each made one small decision that would echo for 20 years. Jason looked at his check and thought, I finally have money to enjoy life. Ben looked at the same number and thought, how much of this can I put to work before I even see it? Neither of them was wrong to want a good life, but only one of them understood that money spent today can never work for you tomorrow. Jason set up automatic payments for his new phone plan, his car lease, and a streaming bundle he barely used. Ben set up one automatic transfer to $300 a month, straight into a brokerage account, before it ever touched his checking account. Two men, two automations, two completely different futures, quietly set in motion, and neither of them felt it yet. This is where most get-rich stories skip ahead. But the real story, the one that actually matters, happens in the boring middle. Every morning, Jason hit snooze 3 times, rushed out the door, and grabbed a $7 coffee and pastry on the way to work. Every morning, Ben woke up 30 minutes earlier, made coffee at home, and spent 10 quiet minutes reading about where his money was invested. That's a $7 difference. Once. Multiplied by 5 days a week, it's $1,400 a year Jason never noticed leaving his hands. And redirected that same energy into learning. Not because he loved reading, because he understood that ignorance is the most expensive thing you can own. On weekends, Jason and his friends went out. Dinners, bar tabs, the occasional weekend trip charged to a credit card. Ben went out too. He wasn't a monk, but he paid cash, set a limit before he left the house, and stopped when he hit it. By month 6, Jason had a new gaming console, 3 streaming subscriptions, and $1,200 in credit card debt. Ben had $1,800 sitting in his brokerage account, not because he earned more, but because he simply let his automation run undisturbed. Jason got his first credit card offer with a higher limit and felt like he'd made it. Ben got his first dividend payment, $12, and felt exactly the same way. $12 doesn't sound like much, but it was the first time Ben's money had ever made him money, without him doing any work at all. A year in, Jason got a small raise, and immediately upgraded his apartment to one with a better view and a higher rent. Ben got the same raise. He increased his automatic investment by the exact same amount, and kept living in the same apartment. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's the single most common reason people never build wealth, no matter how much they earn. Ben avoided it with one rule. Every time his income went up, his savings rate went up first, automatically, before he ever saw the extra money. 2 years in, nobody could tell the difference between them by looking. Jason actually looked more successful. That's the trap. Early on, bad habits look better than good ones. By year 3, Jason's credit card debt had grown to $6,000. The minimum payments felt manageable, until they didn't. Ben's investment account had quietly grown to $14,000. He hadn't checked it in months. The automation didn't need his attention to work. Jason started picking up overtime shifts to cover his payments. More hours, more stress. Somehow, still not enough. Ben started reading about a small side business he could run in his spare time. Not out of desperation, but curiosity. Within a few months, Ben had launched a small online store. It made $200 in its first month. Not life-changing, but it was another stream, running in parallel with his job. Jason saw Ben's side project and thought it looked like a lot of unnecessary work for a small amount of money. Ben didn't argue. He just kept going, because he understood that small streams, left running long enough, eventually become rivers. By year 5, Jason's debt had climbed to $9,000. He'd gotten 2 raises, and both had disappeared into a lifestyle he could no longer easily undo. Ben's investment account had crossed $45,000. His side business now brought in $800 a month, more than his rent. The stock market dropped 20% that year. Jason didn't notice. He had no investments to lose. Ben watched his balance fall by $9,000 overnight. But instead of panicking, Ben increased his monthly investment. He'd learned that a market drop isn't a disaster. It's a sale. This single decision, buying more when things looked scary, would end up being one of the most important moments of Ben's financial life. Jason, meanwhile, took out a personal loan to consolidate his credit card debt, trading one problem for a slightly different shaped one. By year 8, the market had recovered and then some. Ben's portfolio, boosted by everything he bought during the dip, had grown past $110,000. Jason had finally paid off his consolidation loan, just in time to finance a new car, because his old one had 130,000 miles on it. Same income, same decade. One man was funding his future, the other was still funding his past. Ben's side business had grown enough that he considered something Jason had never once thought was possible: leaving his job. At year 10, Ben handed in his resignation. Not out of frustration, out of readiness. His business and investments now covered more than his old salary. Jason was still at the same desk, in the same role, with a slightly higher title, and the exact same financial stress he'd had for a decade. At year 12, Ben used part of his investment gains to buy a small rental property, a new stream, stacked on top of the others. Jason, that same year, was denied a mortgage application. His debt-to-income ratio was too high, even with a decade of steady paychecks. At year 15, Ben's combined net worth, investments, business, and property, crossed $500,000. Jason's net worth that same year was negative $4,000. More debt than assets, after 15 years of full-time work. This wasn't because Jason was lazy. He worked just as hard as Ben, every single day, for 15 years straight. The difference was never effort. It was direction. Ben's hard work was pointed at building assets. Jason's hard work was pointed at maintaining a lifestyle. At year 18, Ben's rental property and business income together exceeded his old salary by 3 times over. Jason, at year 18, was passed over for a promotion. The company was looking for someone with more financial stability for a role that handled budgets. At year 20, Ben sat down and reviewed his full financial picture. $1.4 million, built from one $300 a month decision made 2 decades earlier. Jason, at year 20, was told his position was being eliminated in a company restructuring. 20 years of loyalty, and no financial cushion to fall back on. Here's the part most people miss. Jason and Ben earned almost the exact same amount of money over those 20 years. The gap wasn't income. It was what happened to that income the moment it arrived. Every paycheck is a decision point. Spend it all, and it disappears the moment it arrives. Direct even a small piece of it into something that grows, and 20 years becomes a completely different story. You don't need Ben's exact business idea, or his exact portfolio. You need his exact principle. Pay your future self first, automatically, before anything else touches that money. It doesn't have to be $300 a month. It can be $20. The amount matters far less than the habit of never skipping it. 20 years from now, you'll be living in the results of decisions you're making this week. Choose the one you'll actually be glad about. If this helped you see your paycheck differently, subscribe to Habits Mindset. Every week, we break down the real habits behind real financial outcomes. See you in the next one.